Function with Purpose podcast. All things health, wellness, fitness, and education through the physical therapy perspective. I am Dr. Amy Bullock, owner and founder of Fortress Physical Therapy. Fortress PT is here to serve the Charlotte metro area by highlighting the importance of how and why physical therapy should be a part of your health and wellness lifestyle. Here we go. Season 4, Episode 1 of the Function with Purpose podcast. Dr. Amy here into the new year 2022. Oh my gosh, I can't believe Season 4 is the start of the second year of doing this podcast. My goal last year, which I made it, was to do a full year of podcasting, and I did. And I got a couple followers along the way. So thank you for those who follow the Function with Purpose podcast. Spread it to your friends, your mom, your dad, your sister, your dog, your aunt, your uncle, your friend from abroad. The more listeners, the better. But honestly, the more listeners, the better educated, hopefully, you can become. Okay, so Season 4, Episode 1. What are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to revisit the use of wearables. So, after having my Apple iWatch and Whoop band, not sponsored by either of those companies, I wanted to give you guys an update on both bands and my more in-depth thought on them. So we're going to start with the iWatch. Again, I'm not sponsored by either the iWatch or Whoop band, but I'm very satisfied with the use of both of these. But the Apple iWatch. So for those of you who have Apple products, it's obviously just an extension of your phone. It's basically a phone on your wrist. Now, mine in particular, I don't have the data one, so I have to be Bluetooth to my phone through it in order to get phone calls as well as connected to the Wi-Fi. But going back to the Apple iWatch, this is something that I do wear during sleep, and I wear it daily. I might only have it off for about 2 hours, if that, when I shower. So when I prep for the night, I do not wear this while I'm in the shower. However, just to give you some background on that, so pertaining to health stuff that it tracks, it's very basic. It tracks heart rate. It tracks oxygen levels. It tracks hearing impairment limitations. So, for example, if you have the music too high for too long, it will warn you and say, you need to turn down this music or else continued exposure to high frequency noise is not good for your ears. As well as the connection between the health app on the iPhone in relation to the watch. So again, as I mentioned before, the watch is an extension of the iPhone. So I do use the health app that's involved with the iPhone. So I track everywhere and everything from my activity levels. So my steps, my movement, my exercise ring, and I also, from a female perspective, I track my menstrual cycle on there as well. So those are primarily the main things that I use my Apple iWatch for, is just those basic measurements of my health metric measurements. Now, one thing that I noticed, it doesn't really truly measure activity strain. Like, yeah, shoot for 10,000 steps a day, but 10,000 steps a day doesn't really cause exercise or activity strain to the heart. in order to significantly improve overall wellness and health metrics. So don't get me wrong, 10,000 steps or more a day is good for you, but if you truly want to see a significant increase in fitness and wellness, which then corresponds with the daily metrics that we tend to try to look at, heart rate, O2, resting heart rate, then you want to apply some type of strain activity to your body. So, lifting weights, getting some very good conditioning in, besides 10,000 steps a day. Another thing too, from a physical therapy perspective, I actually utilize both of these wearables, the Apple iWatch and Whoop, with my patients. So if my patients do happen to have the iWatch, I make sure I become friends with them in the activity app. And same thing with Whoop. So now, switching to the Whoop side, the Whoop wearable band, that's WHOOP. They just came out with a new 4.0 strap. At this moment, I don't have a 4.0, I have a 3.0, but it works the same. The 3.0 doesn't track the oxygen levels, but the new one does. So digging in a little bit more to the Whoop after having it for several months, I started back in August, September. So at this moment when this podcast comes out, I would have this Whoop band now for about 6 or 7 months. So my perspective on this, I love it. Oh my gosh. Talk about really digging deeper into obtaining a certain amount of strain for the day in relation to the metrics that it tracks. So the main metrics that it does track is resting heart rate and heart rate fluctuations, respiratory rate, and the main thing is heart rate variability. So you take the heart rate as well as the respiratory rate, and that kind of shoots out your heart rate variability number. There is a podcast that I shot on or recorded a while back regarding heart rate variability. I'll link it in the description below, and you guys can take a listen to that. But essentially, heart rate variability, I want you to think as the higher the number, the more you can delegate energy to your daily routine or your attention to activity. You're ready to take on strain, a significant amount of strain. So the higher that heart rate variability number, the more strain you can achieve and be ready for it. The lower the number, you might feel lethargic, tired, or something of that nature. So another thing that the Whoop band, how it obtains these metrics is the way that you pattern your daily routine. So it really focuses on like the sleep. It hones in on your sleep pattern. So a cool thing with that, when you wake up the next morning and it reads your sleep, you can also input things in like a comment section. So essentially you take notes, right? So over the past several months, I've been recovering from Achilles tendonitis in my left Achilles. So I would always track that. I still woke up with Achilles strain. I traveled on an airplane last night. My water consumption wasn't that good. I only reached a certain amount of ounces yesterday. Did I receive physical therapy? Did I go to the massage therapist, etc.? So it definitely has provided me better insight from a health perspective when I can keep an eye on certain things that might drop. So here's a good example, which I've done. I might have had an adult beverage or two one night, and the next morning I would wake up in the yellow or red zone. So they kind of put you in these zones when you wake up. So when I woke up in that red or yellow zone, my respiratory rate was high compared to my baselines. My resting heart rate was high compared to my baselines. My heart rate variability was low compared to my baselines. So in turn, I know, and clearly we know, that alcohol can affect the nervous system. It slows it down. So something has to make up for it, which means your resting heart rate will be higher, and most likely your resting respiratory rate will be higher. So it's pretty cool. The Whoop band definitely has a strong indirect measure of the autonomic nervous system in response to the daily effects of stress that you put on your body, the exercise strain that you obtain for the day, your sleep patterns, as well as the food that you eat, etc. So, comparing the two bands. Well, also for the Whoop band, I do have you can kind of track people or develop teams. So Fortress PT does have their own team. So if you're on the Whoop band, I'll link the Fortress team code in the comments. I would love for you to join the team, and we can chat it up on there, as well as keep an eye on each other and keep accountability. So it kind of similarly does that as the iWatch would do, but the Whoop band, you can actually like chat to people like live. You can see their metrics, how they woke up, what was their respiratory rate, etc. So it's definitely more versatile, and it's, again, the main thing is it's an indirect measure of the autonomic nervous system. So that means the fight or flight response versus the rest and digest nervous system responses. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. This is going to be a little bit longer podcast than usual. We might head towards the 20-minute mark. But, okay, so back in October, I got my COVID booster shot in an afternoon. So around 3 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. I was fine. Things were cool. Went to go to bed, and I remember halfway through sleeping, oh my gosh, I was not feeling good. I definitely had a reaction to the booster shot. Arm pain, armpit pain, my lymph nodes were swollen, my lymph nodes in my right breast were swollen, my lymph nodes in my neck was swollen. I literally felt like I had arm surgery, which I don't even know what arm surgery feels like, but I definitely felt sick. I felt like I had the flu. So I woke up the next morning. I immediately took some Tylenol, and I took my temperature. I had a low-grade fever. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm definitely having a reaction to the booster. These are the symptoms that can appear after the COVID booster. And so when I woke up, my Whoop band said I was like 20% recovered. So I was clearly in the red. My baseline metrics, my heart rate variability, my resting heart rate, my respiratory rate, those were all like kind of off the charts. So my respiratory rate range typically on good days and on an average was between 14 and 15 breaths per minute. Well, after my booster shot that next morning, my respiratory rate was just above 18. So clearly my body was trying to fight something off. My resting heart rate after I got the booster shot was almost 60 beats per minute. My typical range for my resting heart rate is in the low 40s. And my heart rate variability, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know my heart rate variability tends to be between like 75 and 100. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was probably in the 60s or maybe the high 50s. So clearly my metrics corresponded with my symptoms I was experiencing. Now, my Apple iWatch, it didn't even pick anything of that up. So, as far as comparing the two, which one gives you a little more insight? Clearly the Whoop band. Like, it is 100% a little bit more, significantly more accurate with the metrics that it tracks. But I do like both bands in general. Again, from a physical therapy standpoint, if some of my patients have an Apple iWatch, I become friends with them on the activity app, and I can see if they've completed an activity or not. But the only thing is, I don't know what their resting heart rate was. I don't know what their oxygen levels were. I can't see that other stuff. But with Whoop, if someone has a Whoop band, I can see how they slept that night before. I can see if they woke up in the green, yellow, or red zones. I can see their heart rate variability. I can see their respiratory rate, etc. And, obviously, I think if I had to really choose between the two, as far as wearables in health statuses and fitness profiles, I would probably go with the Whoop. So I hope that kind of give you guys some more in-depth insight. I may perhaps shoot another podcast down the road regarding the Whoop, and utilizing the Whoop within exercise or training, and kind of seeing for trends on, if you come in for a specific training day, or maybe a CrossFit workout day, like how the heart rate and stuff can correspond with that. It's pretty cool. And I'll get into more. I'll definitely be shooting another episode, but regarding the Whoop band. So yeah. So if any of y'all, especially if you have been a patient and continue to be a patient at Fortress, if you do have an Apple iWatch, let's become friends. And if you have a Whoop band, patient or non-patient, and we are connected somehow through social media, or maybe we're friends, or we crossed each other's path, join the Fortress PT team. I will link the Whoop invite physical therapy Fortress code below, and I'll also link the previous episode that I shot, that I recorded a while back regarding heart rate variability. So, wearables are pretty cool. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out. And that's a wrap for today's episode, Function with Purpose podcast. For more information on this episode, please check out the show notes within your podcast app. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, or drop your comments and questions below. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Thanks for the listen. Pursuit, precision, purpose.